off. Welcome back to another episode of the Freight Pod. That's the first time I've opened the show like that without just a welcome back. And I'm joined today by a special guest per usual, CEO, founder of Ease Logistics, Mr. Peter Coratola. Do you go by Peter?
Depends if you're mad at me or not. Let's go with Peter.
Not there yet. We're 40 seconds in, so I don't have anything to be mad at you about yet. So it's good to have you, man. Welcome to the show.
Likewise, I appreciate you having me on.
So I'm excited. I was just telling you before we started recording, I've come to learn that when I get to sit down with brokerage guys like yourself, it's such a natural conversation and I just love it. So I'm excited for this. Not that it's not exciting to talk to all the AI guys and all these other things, the businesses that I haven't done. It's just a different thing where I have to, really put in more energy and effort versus sitting and talking to a guy like yourself who has been through similar things that I have. And I know your world. And so I'm excited to get into it today.
No, as am I. Yeah, there's a common ground of brotherhood or sisterhood that's formed when you're in the office till 2 a.m, ripping every carrier call off DAT, trying to find somebody.
Speaking of, that is the opposite of ease or easy. And any good broker knows that there's nothing easy about this job. So your company is called Ease Logistics. Let's talk about the name for a second. Where does that come from?
Yeah. I wish I could tell you it was some really thought out business plan. Actually, moments before we were going to file, I was filing for the LLC. It was actually Midwest Loyal with an L, and right before we signed it, the lawyer I've been working with for weeks was like, why Midwest Oil? And this is the name we'd been talking about the whole time. Is what if it gets bigger? I'm like, well, all right, Danny, a little late in the game for opinions, but I appreciate the insight. And I remember at that point just kind of thinking through, what am I trying to accomplish, right? And some of the things that drove me to wanting to do this kind of led me simple, how easy can we make logistics, and then you kind of see where I made that jump and I started searching, and I was actually shocked to find out there wasn't a Ease Logistics. There was an Ease Transport way back in the day out of California, which I will come to find later in starting the company that was quite the hurdle to get over, right? Not only a new MC number, but when you have a similar name company that went out of business, right?
Yep.
But it plays into what the focus is at Ease, and what kind of drove me there is the ease of logistics, making it easy for X user inside the office, the customer, the carrier. How do we increase the experience? How do we make it a better experience? And really taking that model and just applying it through how we operate.
And you were pretty young when you started the company. How old?
I was 24. Yeah, I was 24 years old. I'd worked at another logistics shop prior to that. I graduated from Ohio State criminology degree, which again, come to find out later that actually applies pretty well to logistics as well. My firstborn son came, Peter Joseph, in 23 October, and I was let go from my last, that other logistics company shortly after. So
wait, not in 23, in 13?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry, okay.
2013.
You were 23 or
2013.
Yeah, got it.
I got let go, started in 2014, so I was 24 years old.
Why'd you get let go? Crappy employee?
Pretty much, intolerant, smoking in the office. No, it was, just didn't see eye to eye from the communication I got. It was a peaceful separation, and still a lot of respect because it brought me into the industry and it made me see the opportunities and the potential, what could happen inside.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment that you clearly made some bad decisions early in your life, like going to Ohio State University. I just wanted to find a way to plug that. But as a Michigan man, I was going to say, so how did you find freight? How did you end up even at the first logistics company?
And that was it. When I graduated, in 2012, it wasn't the best market going on really out there with criminology. And my dad's a retired police officer. Even with both those things, I still didn't make the cut to be a police officer. So I was going into the workforce world with a huge ego, right? After being shut
Hmm.
down, and really it was one of the job offers I got at the time. Just I didn't really know what brokerage was, to be honest with you. I walked into the office, interviewed, and I, got a crash course of how the industry works. And real quick, I started to see my life's journey of different jobs I've had, being a coach, working in construction, project management, kind of all coming together and being utilized well in this industry, right? A little bit of grit, problem solving, have to be confident, have to pick up the phone, have to communicate. You do all these things simultaneously really well, right? And you introduce a little bit of luck. Um, it can be, that switch flips, and I started to get the itch type of deal, you know.
Hmm.
And that's really what drew me into the industry, to a point where I was that young guy that probably is annoying to the seasoned brokers, right? Taking the phones at night saying I'll work the weekend shifts, because I was truly intrigued. I don't want to say addicted, but it was like, uh, you know, and I still use the philosophy today: the more you do, the more you make, right? So
Simple.
like, the more customers you call, the more opportunities you get, the more quotes you send, the more loads you have, the more time you call carriers, the better rates, the more time you check on your loads, the less service issues, right? So it was like, your whole life, you're taught, put in hard work and you'll reap the benefits. And I feel like the logistics industry was, for the first time, where you put in the hard work and it really does, you can reap the benefits.
I was going to add before you got there that as you said that the more you do, the more you make. It's like the logistics industry is the perfect example of that. And one of the reasons I was excited about having you on the show is because I think there are a lot of guys and gals out there today who are in a similar position to how you were 12, 11 years ago, young, 23, 24 years old, coming out of college. Maybe they've had their first taste of freight in logistics as a kind of W-2 employee, but they have bigger ambitions and they wonder, like, could I start my own thing? And here you are, kind of 11 years later, being a guy that started by himself,
Mhm.
now has like a fully operational, scaled, successful freight brokerage. It's cool. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show and kind of use you as a source of inspiration for the youngins out there.
I appreciate that, and it is. It's I always say, especially at ease, and I think from the lineage companies you've worked out, I think this also aligns well. It's like, if you if you make it through the first 18 months and you're successful, it, you're going to be successful here, or you're most likely going to go be successful and be the most successful person at the next company you go to, if you keep the same qualities and work ethic. And I think that logistics is a great career path, right? A great entrepreneurial path, but also it's a great first stepping stone for a lot of people that don't know what they want to do, because it forces you to be responsible, forces you to communicate, it forces you to all these things at the same time, right? And then it constantly reminds you how you have to accept defeat, learn from it, and just move on quickly. You gotta like compartmentalize and just go. So
Yeah.
I think it kind of puts that rhino skin on you real quick.
Yeah, those you nailed it. I mean, between from a thicker skin to accepting defeat and moving on quickly with a short kind of goldfish like memory,
Yeah.
to the value of having to do 14 things at once
Right.
and learning how to prioritize, to communication skills. Because if the difference between an excellent communicator and a poor communicator, they could have the same customers, the same opportunities, the same workload, and for the excellent communicator, they're going to make a lot more money and probably have to do a lot less physical work, versus the poor communicator who's going to make a lot less money and have to do a lot more work because you're constantly playing from behind the worse you communicate. And
100.
it's really, to me, like, to take it a step further, great communication it's not even just about how you personally engage or, talk to a customer or to a carrier, but it's almost more so like a step further back is how you set how you set expectations between any relationship you have, whether that's between you and an operations rep on your team, or you and a carrier rep on your team, or you and your carrier, or you and your customer. And the example I always try to use is from my own days as a carrier rep. I had a bunch of owner operators that I worked with, and I worked my ass off for them because, like, I thought that I was competing with not only every other broker, but even the other people on my team. In that, like, if I didn't offer a better level of service to these guys, they would give their trucks to someone else. And that's still true today. And so my thought was, I'm going to tell these guys from the jump, here's the thing. I expect XYZ out of you. I expect you to be as on time as you can be
Yep.
legally. When you're not on time, I just expect you to let me know as soon as possible. And then maybe most or as important, when shit hits the fan, I just expect you to work with me like a partner who wants to do what's best for both of us,
Yeah.
understanding that sometimes what's best for both of us is not best for either of us.
Right.
It's kind of a meeting in the middle type deal. But in exchange for them doing those things, I'd be willing to answer the phone whenever they needed me. And if I wasn't available, I'd call them back right away. I'd always kind of go to bat for them and do whatever I could to take care of them financially and, help them out of detention situations, whatever it may be. But setting that stage on the front end saved me so much time over the long run of not, if a carrier couldn't accommodate that, I wasn't the right fit for them.
Yep.
But that's like to me like a step further on communication that can make a broker's life so much easier.
It's huge, especially on the carrier side, right? And I feel like we handle it, or I handle very similar, setting the expectations. It was like either we're going to be on time or there's a no surprise execution, right? So like we both don't want to be late, but if you tell me you're going to be late, I can work with it, And you find real quick in this industry, we jumped into automotive line production as one of our first customers, right? That's
Oh
like
boy.
that's like taking your driver's ed on the Indy 500, you know. Right?
That's a great
I mean,
comparison. Great analogy.
I've seen grown adults crumble trying to fabricate a story to a plant manager that has line production costs of 15, you know what I mean? You just can't do it, nor
He
should
doesn't
you.
care about the story anyways.
Yeah, he doesn't. And when you possess that internally, you take the same level of respect to your customers as to your carriers, and you set those expectations, right? It just it has that constant flow of respectful communication. A lot of times people don't know where to start. Well, how do you communicate better? How do I always tell people it's as simple as respecting people's time and responding to them and addressing by name. I mean, we have some of our customers that we've worked with for 10 years, and we've deployed truck fleets. We have autonomous trucks. We have all this, warehouse, and they still say, "Hey, your response time is why we love it." I'm like, well, awesome, probably could have saved some money on the other big assets, but I love that the first kind of sales pitch is still working, but
Yeah.
it's so important, and that's what continues to scare me about the evolution of technology in the industry and where it's being placed, right? Like
Because you think it risks losing some of that?
I think it challenges it every day. I mean, I think we're how many months away are we from carriers being inundated every day by AI calls asking where their trucks are?
We're not far from that.
And it terrifies me because then it's the masses that we're fighting with just to actually get them on the phone to talk. And ease takes a stance from a standpoint of humanity executed, but tech enabled, right? So like, we want to always manage the communication between humans and put all the tech behind us to make us quicker, faster, stronger. Um, yeah, there's time and a place for certain customers and carriers that like portals and like that. I'm not discounting it. But I think the emphasis on respectful communication, timely communication. I mean, it's an incredible business tool where you don't need to invest in massive tech stacks to be able to execute that, right? That's a mindset and that's a cultural inside those walls that if everybody gets on board, It's a, it's a universal perk for everybody that works with you, and it attracts customers, carriers, and business.
Yeah, I think for me, I think about it through the lens of like meeting the customer where they want to be met. And by the customer, I mean the carrier, I mean the shipper, I mean in some cases even your employees.
Sure.
Um, and you bring up an interesting point around kind of the AI bots calling,
Mm,
and it's definitely we're gonna get to
mm,
there's gonna be a problem. Like, there's so many of them coming out, and I'm sure the tech will be good. And I've heard the voice on some of them, and it's good.
mm,
But there's going to be a point of like a tipping point where the carriers are just getting too many calls,
yeah.
and they'll have their own AI technology that probably is doing the same thing. It feels like it's going to be a chaotic mess of data. But I think, as I would think about it, there are going to be some carriers that maybe even prefer it for certain things, where it's like, hey, I want, like, a dispatcher might want to have his own AI that just pays attention to if the trucks are on time
Mm,
and handles all the updates. Because a dispatcher doesn't want to have to take that call from one of your ops guys being like, hey, is that truck going to be on time? Like, he doesn't want to deal with that. Just like your rep doesn't necessarily want to deal with making the call asking if he's going to be on time.
right. And
Um,
that's actually where we've put it. And that's kind of our, when I sat out and I drank the juice of AI, actually this past Monday.
how to taste.
Well, it was tart at first, but now it's very addictive. Uh, it was
It's
terrifying.
like a Diet Coke.
Yeah, it like challenged everything for the philosophy that got us here. I mean, for the size that we've gotten, we're sending handwritten email updates 24 hours a day to customers, big and small, right? So I'm that terrified of like losing that experience. That call me
I
crazy.
get it.
But where our focus was is using it for the outbound compliance calls, and when we're building it, I was very direct. It was let it sound like a human, but it should be the experience of like TSA. Nobody goes through TSA and be like, man, that was a great pat down. I really enjoyed that customer experience. It's like, are you the driver that's supposed to be on the load? Are you meeting the qualifications to go through? Right. So it's intentional, but it's required.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like that's a good use case because the calls have to happen. Right. And AI is not emotional. So there's no, all right, waiting on paperwork. I'll mark you empty and said you're going there type of deal. It's yes or no type of deal.
Hmm.
Um, that is a area where we're finding success, right? I'm terrified to put it anywhere else right now because, right, like you said, we both grew up on the ops floor. We know how much is learned on an inbound call for someone calling in on a load, or just from the first couple seconds of the tone or whatever, you know, and those are all things that I'm still striving to get back. Like 4 years ago, we converted to soft phones. It killed my soul. Right? You don't hear the
You
hard.
don't hear the ring
Oh my god. I still, part of me wants to go hang an old phone up at the top of the ops floor just to have it, like background noise.
ringing.
And
Yep.
how could it be applied? Of carriers could have their own AI agent when they called just to say, hey, we have someone call me, so they always get so the call's always answered. I think that's a good way to have a good meeting ground, but it definitely terrifies me. And I think we're approaching it in a way that aligns with our service and how we want to continue to handle our operations. But I think about all the time about these carriers uh, inundated. I mean, how many calls we all get spam calls? I can't imagine the shippers how many they get.
Hmm. Are you looking to grow your brokerage? Are you struggling to land new customers in these challenging market conditions? Look within. So many companies that tender you freight throughout the domestic United States also have business coming out of Mexico. A year ago, I understand why you might not have seen that freight as an opportunity. But today, Cargado exists. And that means any load coming into or out of Mexico is now an opportunity for you to support. In just over a year, I've been able to see Cargado go from ideation to launch to rapid growth. It's amazing to see how many logistics companies have been able to use Cargado to expand into Mexico to grow their business. Cargado is the first platform that connects logistics companies and trucking companies who are moving freight into and out of Mexico. If you move Mexico freight or are planning to, reach out to Cargado today at cargado.com. That's CARGADO.com. Yeah, it's great. It's changed. I feel like we really are at a tipping point. You know, when we look at the last 11 years of your business, and I do want you to kind of walk through some of the early days, but like there were little, or it feels like there were impactful changes in the industry that happened like kind of in silos. Like the ELD mandate happened. I think you were like 3 years into your business at
Yeah.
that point. That was a big change.
Sure.
But it was like siloed,
Mm,
and we all kind of dealt with it as we did. There was
mm,
like the carb out in California,
mm.
that whole thing, um, a change, you navigated it, whatever.
Right.
But there weren't like groundbreaking changes in our industry. You know, the big one was, I guess, the last couple of years that I thought was really going to impact how guys like you and I had to think about our businesses was the API pricing
Yeah.
for kind of real time dynamic spot quoting.
Yep.
Like that was a meaningful change where it's like, okay, if I don't figure out how to bring this into my business, I'm going to lose some of my volume from customers. Like
Right.
that was your hand was forced.
Yeah.
What we're entering now with this kind of age of AI feels like it's a very different change because one, it's not a required change. It's not something that your shippers aren't like calling you and saying, hey, if you don't implement AI, you're out.
Mm,
And two, it's completely uncharted territory where no one knows what the scaled outcome of any one of these solutions might look like. No one knows what it's going to look like when you let the AI call every carrier in your network every day
right.
and how they're going to react to it, any of that. So it's like you kind of have to, as an individual business owner, make these individual bets within your company on, I think this is going to work. I think that's going to work. So I am curious, um, from your perspective, like how are you thinking about how to deploy what and when? It feels like you're kind of more on the not skeptical, but apprehensive, or
Uh,
really, I guess how I would, if I had to guess, and I'll let you answer, which
mm,
probably makes more sense than me guessing, but it's that you're so tuned into how you execute for your customers because that's the one thing has always kept your business growing and afloat. And this is all new and all going to change that. And there's risk that it won't change it for the better necessarily,
yeah.
and that there may be fall off in service, and you just can't have that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, our industry has kept some very age old things for a very long time. And then we get some of these, right? I mean, shit, I think we still have a MyFax account. I might be the only person MyFax I might be the only customer left, right? Like, but I mean, I think we both remember faxing packets back. You know what I
Oh
mean? That
yeah,
was,
Zeta Fax.
and now, now AI comes out, and within 2 weeks of, it comes out, then there's all these different things. It's hard to keep up. Um, how we look at it is, again, where can we apply it that doesn't impact things that has got us here? Communication, accountability, making sure that our compliance is high. So where do we focus? Right? Have viciously attack some redundant processes that are taking up times on call. Sure. So when I looked at AI, how did we want to start with it? Was our first benchmark was I wanted everybody in the ops floor. If I went out there and asked who's using AI today, everyone to raise their hand. You made a post the other day. I was going to ask you about it. About everyone's talking about AI. Who can show me something? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate that. I'd be curious, on record, off record, to see kind of what the responses kind of got because I feel the same way. So our goal when we set out was how do we get everybody using it in any capacity. And that's been our goal. And 6 weeks ago we launched our first AI account manager assistant in our ops on a Thursday, and at noon I walked the ops for how many people use AI today. Before lunch, 20%. Before lunch, not lunch, 20% maybe raised their hand.
Mm-hmm.
Next day walked out. entire fully raised their hand, right? And it wasn't auto rating, it wasn't getting in the way of customers. It was that asking questions about data that we had, and the communications inside our teams chats went from, hey, what should I pay on this, to look at the carrier rate versus market rate analysis when we book 72 hours versus 48 hours on these shipments. But it was like, so like how I'm looking at it is, how do we improve just people's adoption and like how they use AI inside these walls, and then let us see the most type of questions that are being asked, and let that be the next command prompts that we are writing. And since we've deployed, we're up to about 1,000 interactions a day across the ops floor.
So what you're saying is it's less customer facing and more currently a tool to give your people who are individuals doing their individual job a better way to digest data and information that's available to them that without AI they didn't necessarily know how to get to at least as quickly.
100%. There's no AI between us and the customer. It's taking every customer data that we get from inbound email or data loads on the board, and capacity or account managers can say, what quotes do I have, or where should I focus? Do I have any issues? You know, give me something to talk to this customer about. And it's just, now there's, and we've limited it a little bit, and I've told everyone with caution, like, we're again, which is a crazy thing that we have to talk about, is hallucination with technology, right? Um, Crazy, but it's just, I think, getting everybody to adopt it and just get comfortable with this new form of technology, this truly interactive form of technology, right? That expands your brain, that challenges the normal, right? It's not just like, let me type in this word or put in Excel, and it's it's like making you think and use technology and data to actually, instigate motion. It's
Yeah.
rather than just using data to say, this is what I did, we were successful or not. It's, this is what we did and this is what we should do now, or this is what the trends are telling us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really powerful when you start getting a buy-in on just using it. And I've been happy with our approach, and I think the use cases show that it's, at least it's working inside our walls of getting more buy-in and people using AI every day.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way you're thinking about it because you made it clear your intent, which is you want everybody to taste it and get a feel for it and try it. And in doing that, there's a couple things that happen. One is like curiosity becomes like a catalyst for opportunity and
Mhm.
development because you're not giving them like a hey, when you schedule, you must
Right,
use this tool to hit this button. That's like more remedial, like redundant task removal, as you were talking about.
right,
But this is more of like a how do you engage with the customer better using our data today? And we've now given you a tool so you can ask it kind of dumb questions and not
right,
feel dumb,
right,
but like you can play. And, play is a great way to get people to one, be bought in.
right.
But two, what I think it will do is it's going to give people a chance to stand out. Like if I'm an employee in your four walls right now, I'm thinking, how do I become the best at this? How do I show that
Yep,
I am able to take this new tool and make the most out of it for myself in terms of my own development, but also for my customers and my carriers and ultimately for the business? Because whether people like it or not, like this is becoming a part of the future. I'm not going to say this is the future because I don't know. I'm
right.
not saying it's everything, but it will be.
Mm,
It will be in most of our workflows in 5 years. And the people who in the early days showed the most promise and kind of adaptability to navigate it and
mm.
leverage it, those are the people who are going to be running the business. I mean, those are the people who are going to be leading the new teams and divisions that get started up using this stuff.
Uh,
So I just really like kind of how you're thinking about it, especially in the keeping in mind that it's low risk.
Right. That's it. It's
Like,
creative. And like you said, we may be losing some ground on certain areas where we don't have AI fully deployed, but we have 100% adoption maybe on an ops floor. So it's like, we're grooming a team to at least understand how to use it. So, and when I told the ops floor, I told them kind of like when we started this talk, it's like you using AI every day will make you successful here, and if ease is not your forever career, it's going to make you successful somewhere else because this is where the world's going, right? So
Yep.
challenging yourself, just like I challenge myself to get on, inbound logistics or something every day to just read something, it's the same thing. Ask it a question, and it and when you start to see the type of questions, I mean, I look at what it can do, and I think back like what we said. The more you do, the more you make. Like what it can do for a, a growing account manager, um, for engagement, or how do I talk to this guy? Who should I call? What carrier should I call? Like one of our next kind of phases is how do we increase the chance of success on the first outbound carrier call for a load by X%? You know, because as well as I know that if we move that needle 5%, that extrapolated by what I mean, that's why it's like it's it's hard to even trace back an ROI. But for people that's been on the floor, if my successful book call is the third call rather than the seventh call, how much time we're getting back.
It- so it's crazy to me. That's such a perfect example of using this internally to become more efficient. And I can't help but go back to, for me, what was 2000, I don't know, maybe 2009, 2010. I was 19 or 20 working as a carrier rep. And Coyote had as good a tools as anyone back then.
Mhm.
But even then, knowing who to call on a load for me was I was a sticky notes guy. I had
Yeah,
100 sticky notes on my
yeah,
desk.
like Rain Man.
And like I just really, yeah, I was like, it was a little bit Rain Man-y where I was like trying to rely on my memory. I'm like, okay, I just saw this Coke load from Atlanta to
Right,
Tampa. Who is it? Who is the guy I talked to? Oh, Impel Logistics. Where's his number? Oh, it's over here.
right,
Like that's the first guy I should call because he's interested. Like
hundred
to think
percent.
of where we were then versus what you can do today with the technology is it's fascinating.
And that's how you think about building it, that right. It's like, hey, remind me of this Coca. It's just like those type of reps. It's like let's just start getting those all in a box to make our account managers and our carrier reps so powerful that the chance of success on their first engagement is so high, right? Or at least it yields something. It yields a yes or a no. Not what we're trying to do is at least not remove empty calls or carriers or customers we shouldn't have called or something like that.
Yep. And I just want to hit one more thing on your point about like feeling like maybe there's an area where you're behind against competitors in this. And I want to say resoundingly, I don't think that's going to be the case because I think there's a very valuable lesson that people can learn from Uber.
Hmm.
Uber came into this industry with more resources than anyone ever has. No one has ever come into this space as a startup with the amount of financial and technical resources that Uber had. And like it wasn't hard for them to get business. I mean, they called and people wanted to hear what Uber had to say.
Sure.
Yet 10 years later, they have a reputation that is not necessarily one that certainly you or I would be proud of in terms of how you and I think about execution and service. Because for us, the customer is always first, and making sure that we deliver on the commitments we made to them is like if we said we were going to do XYZ, then we have to make sure we do XYZ.
Done.
And I think the fault in Uber's approach was their philosophy was innovate, 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 even if it's at the expense of the customer in the short term. I think in their minds, in the long run, they were always going to do what's best for the customer, but there was a lot of pain created for the customer along the way. Why? Because technology was the priority. And when you make technology the priority above the simple execution, what ends up happening is you deploy a new technology or deploy new AI tool or this or that, and 60% of it works because it's never right the first time.
Right.
And the 40% is fallout. And the people who feel the impact of the fallout are the customers.
Right.
They're the ones that didn't get the right information. They're the ones that didn't get their loads picked up, or they're the ones that get a bid passed back to them. I mean, I will never forget an instance of hearing about an Uber situation where they won like a 30 or $40 million drop trailer award from, I think it was Procter and Gamble, and immediately called and gave the whole thing back and was just like, yeah, the tech didn't work. It wasn't right. And
That's terrifying.
I think that's a perfect example of like, I would be in a very bad mental state if my team was calling our customers doing that. I would not be okay. I would not have made it.
Right.
And I think that's why guys like you and I spend so much time kind of insulating our business with like this. We know the number one rule is execution. Everything has to fit within that rule.
Mhm.
And I'm not just going to deploy a new AI tool because I think in the long run it's going to be great
Right.
if the risk is a deterioration of execution.
That,
And I think that's where a lot of people miss. And so I don't think you fall behind by not like being the first mover on some of this stuff.
right. And that's it. It's like, it's terrifying to say, yes, we want to, I actually think I picked it up from an old Coyote, like talk of like viciously attack redundant processes, right? Like we want to do that, right? But we can't be at the expense of our core values and our core what we agreed to, right? So like let's go attack all the other ones, right? But if I'm losing an edge on my competition because X and that X materially challenges, like you said, 100% execution, 100% be able to stand behind our commitments, be able to get a hold of all these things, then that's right now that's the risk I'm willing to take. Technology is making it easier for logistics companies to be good, right? And I think it's making it harder for people to be great as well, right? So you gotta really foster that communication as a business tool by empowering technology. I think in certain areas, but we share the same sentiment. It terrifies me, and again, like I, I appreciate the confidence you have in my approach. If we do another one in 2 years, we'll see if it was a right call or not.
That's fair. I mean, to me, what I look at it as in terms of what you might be missing out on or what you're losing is you're giving up maybe some efficiency in the near term, where it's like, okay, they say this tool can do XYZ. If I were to do it, I can probably decrease my costs on that function by 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if I have to choose between short term giving up 10% or X% of my potential margin improvement to ensure that my execution stays at the level it needs to, I'm picking that. I'm giving that up every time because I want to see it play out first. Like if every decision I were making as a business leader was just focused on efficiency and margin improvement, you run into a situation at some point where it's a trade-off and you're going to have to sacrifice execution.
Right.
And in an industry where execution is really becoming the only thing that you can sell as how you're differentiating, it's like I always was too scared to put that at risk.
Yeah, and I think that is going to be like going back to your post. Why someone show me AI that's being used across the entire operation at high volume right now. Like, you know what I mean? And we're not talking about the AI that's running automation like the green screens and Avix, all those that are fully automated. We're saying like across the operation being utilized. Um, that's that approach will continue to, I guess, be challenged from that standpoint. And just again, it terrifies me to jump over there, give up your core values at the expense of something that we don't know how it's going to turn out. Right? I think this is a good. I think it's a good. I guess the point I was trying to say is like AI right now is a good example of being a fast follower, and I think everybody wants to be a fast follower. And that's why it's like there's not a lot of arms being raised saying, yeah, it's deployed and we have high volume use across the board here. Look at all these examples, right? So like it's we're talking underneath the scenes, and I understand because it's growing, but I think AI is one of those. It's okay to be a fast follower and see how it's working other places before I go put any of my core values or core values in check.
Attention freight brokers and 3PLs. Greenscreens.ai is transforming how freight professionals price and quote freight. With AI-powered pricing and real-time market intelligence, Greenscreens delivers accurate, reliable predictions to help stay competitive in a constantly shifting market. Whether managing spot rates or long-term contracts, Greenscreens empowers brokers to quote with confidence and boost profitability, removing the guesswork from freight pricing strategies. Trusted by over 220 brokerages, Greenscreens is leading the way in the future of freight pricing. And now there's Illuminate, Greenscreen's latest product designed to shine a light on deeper freight market insights. Illuminate provides unparalleled visibility into spot and contract freight trends, giving users a clearer view of pricing fluctuations and market conditions to inform smarter, more profitable decisions. Visit greenscreens.ai/thefreightpod and discover how Greenscreens and Illuminate can help win more business more profitably. What's funny about that comment is I actually heard the same thing from an AI company, and and I heard it through the lens of somebody who's about to start an AI business, and what they said, I was like, "Do you worry about being too late?" And they were like, "No, no, no. I like being coming in at this point.
Mm.
Like I get to see how everyone else is screwing it up first."
Right.
And these guys are the ones that are taking the chances with these customers and screwing it up. And then,
Mm.
I'm here to understand what they did wrong and apply it effectively so that we don't have that problem.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'm hearing, um, is most of these tools still have too many kinks. And it's
Mm.
not to say that they're not effective in one way or another, but I've heard from a number of brokers that have fired their appointment AI company
Mm.
because they found that it's not an end-to-end solution. It's not, they're not saying, "Hey, we will own your appointments for Kraft Heinz."
Mm.
They're saying, "We'll try to own your appointments for Kraft Heinz, but if there are exceptions, you're going to have to handle them
Right.
and we'll kick it back to you."
Right.
And welcome to logistics,
Right.
where exceptions are the rule.
That's it.
And one of the things I told these guys is like, you should find a way to own the end-to-end execution. If I
Mhm.
was selling AI to these people, I would not sell myself as an AI company. I would sell myself as an execution company,
Mm.
and I would build the infrastructure within it so that I have AI supported by people, which will still be cheaper than it would be for you to have your
Yep.
full-time Ohio staff scheduling appointments.
Mm.
And then what I'm selling you is that if you give me your appointments for craft, you don't have to worry about
Right.
if it's going to get kicked back to you, because whether the technology executes 60% of it and my people do 40%, all you care about is 100% of the loads are going to be scheduled when they're supposed to be.
That's it.
To me, that's how a broker wants to buy technology, because they know it's going to work,
All right.
versus like, be a partner with us and like it'll work sometimes, but like maybe not other times, and we don't have the staff to support you when it doesn't work, so you have to have your staff kind of um uh flexing from when they're involved and not involved, and that's the opposite of accountability. Like you don't want someone, you can't hold your rep accountable if they get to point the finger at the technology
Right.
when it doesn't work.
And that's like our next big focus from like the module side is like, how do we handle the exception management when AI has a non-compliant or an exception? Where does it go? Who do we know got it? Who's responsible for it? How do we know it's being taken care of? You know, um, because it's a little intimidating jumping into some of these deeper portals with command prompts and everything, trying to find the root problem. And we both know we don't want to be on the tail end of a communication with Kraft or whatever customer saying, "Why didn't you pick this PO up?" Now I got to send a full truck at my cost because the robot, didn't know a J was a J type of shit.
Yeah. Have you ever hauled for Americold? I have paid for way too many one-off PO full truckloads for Americold. Americold is one of the most, they're not a bad customer, but just challenging in terms of their PO structure, where
Wow.
you could get sent 20 different POs
Wow.
and it's on you to make sure that they all
I
end up
know.
on the truck. If you show up to the warehouse, they don't care how many POs they load you with. They're going to load you with whatever POs you ask for. And it's really important to get that right.
Yeah, it's one of those
And the
feelings.
last,
Those feelings on
yeah,
the floor when you it immediately, like, damn it. There's not
yep.
even like there's not even a debate about it. You know, it's like,
No, you know you're not charging, and you just go check what the rate is. You're like, all
yeah,
right, what did I just give away? Oh,
right,
3 grand from Atlanta to I don't know,
perfect,
Boston right now.
right,
Wonderful.
perfect,
Send it. Revenue zero.
exactly. Put it on the house count.
Yep. Um,
It's funny.
all right. Well, we've dove
Yeah,
we dove headfirst into AI,
I
so I
know.
appreciate you giving me like 20 minutes on that. I do want to kind of I want to give my listeners some understanding of kind of how you did it. And when I say how you did it, I mean like you're 10 years in. How big is the business today? I forgot to ask you that.
Uh, from a revenue side,
People wise,
yeah, people
revenue,
side, we're
whatever you're
right
comfortable.
around 220 on the logistics side, about just over, depending the last couple of years, 315 to 340 in top line. And on the expedited to the fleet and warehouse side, about 50 to 60 people on that side, and revenues around 25 to 30.
What is the fleet and warehouse side? What is that function of the business?
So it's still under Ease. It's Ease Expedited, and it's a subsidiary. It's the we got asset fleet transportation, and we have operate 3 warehouses.
Oh wow.
You know,
Why'd you choose to get into that business?
uh, go on the role of listening to customers and trying to get more sticky with them. And I just think as a logistics provider now and moving into the future, now that we got the AI talk behind us, I think companies that will continue to grow are companies that harness the ability of multi solutions, and I think assets will continue to be increasingly important. And not saying we want to go own a massive trucking company or own 5 million square feet, but knowing how to navigate it and operate it and have the ability to scale one if we need to, I think is very important. So it got us into it about 5 years ago. Um, you know, the fleet side really started as one straight truck and a couple trailers just to infuse in some drop trailer. I was seeing what I was like paying drop trailer loads. I was like, shit, I'll go get some trailers.
Hmm.
Broke the cardinal rule, jumped over it. Like, like,
I like it though.
yeah,
I think it's the right move.
it had it's come to be that way, and I agree, and I'm happy we did it because it makes the tools on our belt for our account managers and our sales team to offer to customers make us more sticky, right, and be able to do those things. But it also just expands our internal capabilities of how we use our resources. It's like
Hmm.
in a competitive business, if I have one responsibility as in my position is to equip our team with all the resources they need to be successful.
100%.
You know,
100%.
so giving them access to trailers, giving them access to hey, let's cross stock or let's start pitching warehouse. Um, it grows you as a company as well, and it pushes us. So again, it's to tell you that does Ease have some ambition to be a massive trucking company? No, no. Right. Have trailers to support our customers' needs, right? Have power units, position them and do some, pull distribution. I think it's a good play there.
Yeah, you don't want to be a massive trucking company, but you do want to be a massive logistics company, I
Yeah.
think. And you can't do well, maybe you can do it without that stuff, but it's a lot easier to do it with it. And I always come back to I spent so much time in my role just thinking about the interaction between a sales rep and a prospect and just the conversation and like what does my team have to sell,
Mm,
and maybe more importantly or as important, what are they selling against?
yep.
What does the competition look like? And it just I felt like I was kind of almost the guy in the pool. What is it? What do they say? The guy in the ocean when the tide comes in and he's swimming naked,
Yeah. Haven't heard that one,
and
but
all of a sudden you're just standing there naked.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that to me feels more and more like what a non-asset based transactional broker is becoming.
Mm,
And I use the term transactional, and Jet McCandless actually said this on the show recently, where he said he thinks in 2 years there won't be transactional brokers anymore. If you're just a transactional broker, he
mm,
thinks you won't exist. And I think it's important to define transactional because
mm.
to me, transactional broker is a pure spot broker that's just kind of supporting you on the spot market. There's
Right.
no depth. There's not even like contract rates that you own. And I don't see how those companies survive long term.
It's it. it challenges me as well, right? He's been fortunate to, how we've grown, about 65, 70% of our business is dedicated, and that's kind of always been our focus. We're a split model as well. So, we don't have the massive floor of, cradle to grave, which again, it works for some, and it's never been our, bring people in to focus on certain tasks. I think, like you said, it would terrify me because I remember at one point Ease was all spot, and that's a terrifying. It is, it's like, and a lot of it was automotive too. So it's like, it's either I miss it or I shut it down. I'm screwed either way, and but it does force excellence. And then if you take that excellence and know how to convert spot into strategic or enterprise, right? Then I think that's the sweet spot. And like you said, it comes with execution. But then it comes to how do you get more sticky with customers, right? And I was,
Mm-hmm.
what's the cardinal, what's the biggest feedback that sales get from prospects, right? Asset only, you
Yep.
know? And I always tell our sales rep that it should be it's a two-part conversation. The different, the difference between us and an asset is I don't have the reason to tell you why I didn't pick up the load outside of greed, right? And if you still
Mm-hmm.
only one asset, let us see what your opportunities are, and we'll see if it makes sense for our fleet on there, right? But from a standpoint of wanting to make sure that we honor our commitments at all times, which that's what's made us successful, it would be doing a customer a disservice to say, let's only say this truck because this truck doesn't show over, my driver's sick. I want to be able to cover my commitments at my cost because it's what we signed up, And on the flip side, customers, they provide opportunities, but there's no expectation for them to have to give you margin. I always tell ourselves that's like for us to create, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So customers can provide opportunities. You got to provide service. You have to create your own margin, but then you got to figure out a way to get sticky. And it's hard in it's hard in a very transactional world, like you said.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Especially because there's a the old serenity prayer, the idea that like there are certain things that are within your control and that's what you have to focus on, and then there are things that are not in your control. And one thing that I've always found to be true in our industry is every year your customers take a position. It's either we are reducing the number of carriers we're working with, which is usually what it feels like it is, or it's we're adding a few very specialized
Right.
if it really makes sense. But like ultimately, it's not in your control if you get that call from a shipper who says like, "Hey, just FYI, we're looking at downsizing our network from 200 to 150 or from 50 to 30."
Right.
But what is within your control is like your position within that company over time and how the services you provide develop create that stickiness. And it is way less likely for you to get the cut if you're entrenched in their business across three different modes.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got some warehousing you're supporting, if you're doing some of their expedited, and you've got contractual over the road volume, you're in such a better spot. I use spot on purpose than the guy who does 5 spot loads a week and he just lives on the portal. Does he have less risk than you? And that's what a lot of brokers want is less risk. Sure.
Same.
But like that's like a different problem.
Right.
And I always looked at contract freight as insurance. Like you have to have it.
Yep.
And if you don't, when the tide comes in, like it would have been a really hard time for you in the last year as this tariff stuff started to be just a purely spot automotive player. I mean, you probably would have had to lay off a ton of people.
Sure.
It's
Would have been brutal, and it also materially challenges where we want to be as a company to carriers. I don't want to be the one that offers carriers $145 to start their truck for, what I mean. It's like it's just not our model. But it's like good freight is earned, and like great customers are retained with execution. And I think that's just like it's proven in every size customer. It's like I yes, we understand the customers there'll always be a price driver. We get it. But um, when we get, internal feedback, this customer, it's hard to, to land loads or, get good margin on it. I always say, look, I'm always hiring people that can find customers that have the 20% margins right off the rip, you know. But always,
Those are great.
I'm always though, you know.
Unicorns.
Yep. But until then, you got to go prove and you got to earn it. You got to earn the trust, and you get opportunities, and then it's on you to make the margin, right? So yeah, and it is again as we move forward in the future. Like I said, it's easier for logistics companies now to be good, but the heavy transactions, you know, that's why we've really tried to focus on getting more sticky, more strategic with our customers, but also our solutions.
Was automotive an intentional focus early on, or you
So,
just didn't realize what you were signing up for, and then that was all you knew?
well, the mindset behind it was right. I like the industry because opportunities are plentiful, right? So, also where we are located, we're kind of in that automotive. We're definitely in the automotive pipeline, right? And we got
Yep.
a massive OEM just right outside the city. So just having that exposure, if you're wanting to grow, right, and learn best practices, if you get the opportunity, line production automotive forces you to do it. It builds excellence. It builds 100% GPS compliance. It builds 100% SLA. It builds true 24/7 service, right? The other attraction to it was it was me and myself, right? Um, and I can't go compete with a lot of companies at that point. So how am I going to grow? So if I'm going to service an industry that has continuous opportunities 24/7, right, while competition's sleeping, I can continue to kind of itch that revenue up to get more people on. So, you know, it was a combination of the attraction to it just because of where I'm located, right? But also that continuous opportunity of round the clock opportunities. And what I was noticing from my experience at the other company I was at, not saying that they practice this way, but just from the companies I learned while I was there, was a lot of the largest companies out there, right? They had 24/7, but they were more just track and trace, right? Like
Hmm.
full execution at 2 in the morning to get quote, truck booked, all that, right? Um, I think maybe agree or not. I don't think it's as plentiful as everyone makes out to be when they say we have true 24/7, right? And shots fired potentially across the whole industry. So I apologize, but I was starting a company, so let me be ambitious. But that was it, and we learned a lot. When you learn response time is important, and again, you cannot dispatch a truck without it being on GPS. I mean, we've had people come from other companies and think it's wild that our GPS compliance is 100%, and that's the daily expectation. You know,
Yep.
but
Yeah, it does seem crazy as someone who was never in automotive that like knowing my own experience, we struggled with that. So I get um
and it's
it
wild.
would be surprising to me to walk into a brokerage and them to be like, we're at 100% GPS tracking compliance. I would just be like, I think you're lying. I think you're manipulating.
I know, and I always up for the facts checks on that, and we do it after, but it's one of those things. You have a few of those calls, and you need to know exactly where the truck is, and like you're born in those moments, and that's where all of our processes have been born and grown is preventing those type of situations where where's the truck and I can't answer it right away, right? So it
Hmm.
takes 5 or 7 more minutes, or it could possibly be rebooking the whole truck. But in the moment when you need it, it's exponentially better, and those are when best customer moments are formed. I mean, I remember it was like 9 months in of doing mine automotive, and it was in the winter, and from like Mississauga to down here close to Columbus, 294 miles. Truck got stuck on Ambassador Bridge because of snow. I had sent email updates every 5 minutes. I mean, when I had to go down to the plant to explain because the line shut down, I mean, I had 40 pages of email updates every five trucks 1 mile. You know what I mean? And that was like a turning point in the relationship, I would say, because they even said, come in these meetings and there's no communication, that we had no updates, right? And all I had, I didn't have any fancy technology. I literally had printed out just our email chain, right? I didn't know what a 5Y or all this shit was like, you know, but you go through a couple of those and then you take that automotive service and those expectations and you apply it to the food and beverage or CPG industry, right? And like, it gets eaten up when they say you're going to honor your commitments, you're going to be available, you're going to have true operations, right? You're going to follow through with what you say. Um, and it kind of, grew us in those industries.
At Mola, we built a great company, and I'm proud of the work we did. We knew when to ask for help, and sometimes that meant going outside of our own company. I'm proud we built an ecosystem of trusted partners like Metaphora. When we needed differentiated industry expertise in business consulting or technology services, we looked to Peter, Ryan, and the team at Metaphora. They've consistently delivered value in the transportation and logistics space for over a decade for mid-market and enterprise brokers, for shippers, carriers, private equity, and freight tech companies. At Mola, we use Metaphor to solve problems we simply couldn't on our own. Metaphor is the only partner you should trust to help you win, whether that's doing ops and tech diligence, growing revenue, optimizing spend, or selecting and building software. Go check them out at metaphora.net. That's metafora.net. Yes, it's your comment around 20. I love that story, and I'm going to share a similar one. But the comments around 24/7, I do believe that, like you said, it's almost like it's not really 24/7, and I was in that camp where it's like we had people who could answer the phone
Sure.
at 1 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
but they couldn't solve a problem.
Right.
So like, how do you set up the structure to like really solve the problem? And I couldn't one of my first big accounts as a sales rep when I was like 23 was Lasership,
Mm-hmm.
the East Coast package delivery company, final mile delivery company. And we had dedicated lanes from Charlotte to Tampa and Charlotte to Miami. Every night at 2 a.m. they picked up and they delivered straight through. It was like 600 miles or something like that. And they would deliver at 2 p.m. with teams. And if at 2 a.m. the driver hadn't shown up, I was getting a call on my cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no other solution to handle this because I couldn't ask the after hours team that was making, I don't know, $15 an hour to like solve the problem. Because this guy was calling, and if the truck wasn't there and I didn't know why, he was mother effing me.
Yeah.
And because in their minds, it was like it's not one truck. Every truck has 2,000 packages. And if it doesn't make it in time for the sort, then those 2,000 packages all don't deliver that day, which means that 2,000 people had missed deliveries.
Right.
So I ended up eventually, I think, giving up the business because my girlfriend at the time was like, you can't keep taking calls at 2 a.m. every morning. But I didn't have a better system. I didn't know how to build a system that was better. I was just a sales rep at the time. And my point in this is like this was at Coyote. We were as, a top brokerage. But even then, we didn't have systems in place to represent 24/7 problem solving coverage.
And it's hard, and it's taken us, and it's not just we found it broke down and tell them it's find a recovery, find a cross dock, take 40, 24 pallets off to the side of a Tennessee road, and get it going. It's not like you can't just say, hey, it broke down, I'll be there at 8. Like it's like incomprehensible on how that's received on the other side. It's like, yeah, no.
Yeah. Can you explain that a little bit? Just for my audience that doesn't understand maybe automotive, like what are the expectations and then what are the ramifications when you are late and a line shuts down, and what are the cost ramifications? I'd love to just
Yeah.
get into
I mean,
that.
it's a high expectations at all times. It's no fail, right? Uh, the OEMs that we support, specific to this, their inventory, what's on these trucks are going right off the trucks, right up, being plugged into plants, right? These plants have 5,000, 5,500 people working, right? So there's a cost per minute, there's a cost per hour, right? And there's production and there's post production, right? So when you shut down and you're late with production parts, it's not just go start another line. The entire line start all the way back to the new white bodies coming in, right? So when you talk about what's the expectation, it's our motto is don't shut down the line at all costs, right? Like no matter what, don't shut down the line, whatever it is. I mean, we've set up helicopters, we've sent not jet ski, snowmobiles. I mean, you don't shut it down because the math is if it's $10,000 a minute, $5,000 a minute, right?
And that's what it is, right?
Yeah,
It's the numbers are that
yeah.
astronomical if you fail.
Right, and depending on what plan it is and what line, if it's line one production at the main OEM that's doing 6,500 cars or something, right? I mean, you could get up, 12,000, 50. I mean, it gets there, right? So it when you are in that environment, right? You can't just say we're gonna just handle it tomorrow. You got to solve it, right? So those expectations, and they need to know when you're gonna talk to me next. What's your plan of action? How are you gonna recover it? What are you gonna do, right? If you shut down a line, it's you know depending on the agreement and the contract, right? It's those costs you can do the math. Take it at $5 a minute or $5,000 a minute, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
when you start weighing that,
it's astronomical. I mean, it really sounds like one load can destroy a year's worth of profitability on an account.
yeah. And one of the biggest drivers of how you handle it too. Again, but let's put on the to the side that we all understand that you got to have sound processes and compliance, right? Is communication. And I learned that from that same plant manager that ran me through the ringer, but my email updates started right was when you tell me I can do things, I can call an early lunch, or I can repurpose the line to maybe do a facility clean, right? So they have these ability to get you more hours, right? So you
If
learn
you're super proactive.
that you're super proactive, right? And that is to the point of if you saw it ping there 3 times in a row, why didn't you call them type of deal,
Hmm.
right? Every minute counts. So you learn to be so proactive and so on top of it that those things like being 100% GPS compliance, you start to just say, fuck it, it has to happen, right? It has
Hmm.
to, right? So, yeah, I mean, it forges you in fire, and the expectations are high. Um, but again, I think it really instills good core processes that are transferable to all industries, right? I know that there are food and beverage customers that are hard to work with just by their demand and CPG and all that. Um, but I think that if you're successful in line production automotive, it's a very transferable to other industries just from an expectation standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I would, is that again? I'm always kind of sitting in the camp of how would I be selling this business to customers, and how would I sell it to prospects? Uh, you could walk into pretty much any shipper, and if you're spending your time telling your stories of your experience in automotive, you're instilling confidence in them that you can support their freight.
Sure.
I mean, it's just a very, if I go in there and I'm telling stories of hauling paper rolls that
Mhm.
have 2 weeks to deliver, I'm not necessarily instilling a ton of confidence that I've built an
Right.
operation that can handle the hardest of
Right.
hard. Um,
But
so
no,
I think that's really interesting.
it is, and it just teaches you, more on the manufacturing supply chain, that how it trickles over to all the other industries, right? And because it's not just to the plant, you have to remember the racks that brought the parts in also have to get back to the supplier so they can put the parts back on the racks to get back on, right? So every way is important, right?
Mhm.
And it's just, and then you see when autos have their planned shutdowns and when production's low. I think maybe because I'm so in tune with it, I see how that impacts the national capacity, right? When they take their 3 week shutdowns mid-year and at the end of the year, right? Um, we see that, and I see all this open capacity going on because all the autos are down, and you get all these, you have to think some of these plants are running 6,500 or 5,000 mass pro routes a day, right? A day, just like shuttle to shuttle, and that stops for 3 weeks. You got all these drivers that are hitting the market and all that stuff. So it's very interesting once you start seeing how the manufacturing ripple effect across multiple industries plays a part there too.
I'm curious to talk about that for a second. If we zoom out and think more thematically around reading the market in general and understanding where capacity is going, where demand is, like how do you guys evaluate the market and evaluate kind of if we're going into if things are changing, if things are turning for the better? Like it's hard to be a company like yours that is kind of committed to executing on the things you promise when in an industry where the only thing that's guaranteed is that the price of the truck from today to tomorrow to a month from now is likely to change, whether it goes up or it goes down. And you just can't necessarily make that same
No.
change on your contractual rates if they're 65 to 70% of your business. So it's really important for you and your team to be in tune with the market in a way that you can effectively price freight.
Mm.
And I'm just curious how you think about that because it's a really interesting challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know we use a lot with, we see our pre-book percentage on dedicated and we see how that gets challenged, right? So once we start seeing pre-book drop to, 60%, let's say on dedicated, we start, that's kind of like future looking that we can start seeing, right? And why is this happening? So it raises some alarms. We see our spot conversions start to, drop under 40%, let's say. Um, that's typically all right. Do we need to tweak our rates? Are we not keeping up with the market? Some of the outside factors that we look at are customer specific is, especially for automotive, is what is their success rate to production schedule, right? How many consecutive weeks have they been at 90% or more than the planned production schedule, right? How many
Mm-hmm.
routes are they canceling? Another big one for us is when we start seeing flatbed capacities start to increase into T1 suppliers and OEMs, right? Because that means we're starting to see some investment in retooling, right? So that typically thinks that we're going to see a spike in production when we start seeing those investments, right?
Mm-hmm.
We on the automotive side, we take that into consideration as well for 45-day projects or 6-month Mass Pro projects type of deal, right?
Yeah.
A lot of that can transfer just from a general capacity side, some of the food and beverage, right? I think temperature capacity is just so crazy since COVID. Like, I told you that I our indicators are 100% accurate. We both know I'm full of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
what it has challenged us though since COVID, and I think we've done a good job of actually being this far in, and that's the first time we've said the word COVID.
Yeah.
Right?
You brought it up. I didn't.
Damn it. Um, but we've evolved a lot as a company. We have some great brains here, and some guys that that are very passionate about freight that are really challenging us on how we look at data and how we apply data. Um, and it's again we a mix of green screens, external market rates, but it's really our goal is establishing that ease rate and how we're buying into the market. Um, so I mean, I could tell you it's when we see lumber go up, I could tell you that copper and all that, but right now a lot of those off the beaten path indicators have been so materially challenged over the last couple of years. Like I'm fact checking them every single day.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
What's your general thesis on when things start to pick up, or if we've still got a long way to go?
I love that question. You know, from the feedback
Look into that crystal ball.
right? I think that we're going to continue. I think, June and July were pretty challenging just from, uh, continued bottom of the recession. Again, you had an extended shutdown for auto. I think this year will continue to be pretty challenging. I think we'll see a spike up as back to school. Um, I do think that, mid Q1 is going to start seeing some roll, some thunder, and I really think that's going to be right. Again, I'm using a lot of automotive, but I know that there are OEMs coming out with 27 new models next year. I know that they're starting new plants, and I've seen the commitment. I've seen you know, for how much I want to say tomorrow, I've I've accepted it, and
Temper expectations.
yeah, But again, I think for the companies that have been around for a minute, we've all learned how to navigate in this bearish kind of market, and we've really focused on preparing for the bull market, so to speak, right? So we've made changes, I know, across the industry since 22. You've seen a lot of kind of restructuring of how companies look at how they operate, right? We've all
Hmm.
gotten a lot smarter. We've all, for the fortunate ones that were able to figure it out, and I know there was a lot of unfortunate situations as well. But being able to navigate this long in this type of market, I think, and preparing for the bullish market to come up, I think it's been a good learning, very long learning curve. But I think it's making us all
Long learning.
very
Yeah,
strong.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
What would you say has been like? How do you keep the team motivated in this type of market? Like, what kind of things can you do to, I don't know, keep the fire lit in the belly?
Yeah, I mean, it's ease. We're very fortunate here, and not to continue to reference, but I love doing it because this is one of the companies I look up to. Coyote, the 2012, 2019 is like there's a swagger inside these walls where people are super proud,
Hmm.
and I got a lot of feedback. That's how it was back in the and I never made the cut to even be considered by Coyote, so I don't know, but I've been told. But it's
Probably that Ohio
yeah,
State degree.
I think of what, but there's a swagger. So I think there's the swagger of ease that keeps a lot of positivity going on. But I also think introducing some technologies like we did, the Amy AI, getting people excited about new solutions like expanding fleet or warehouse, just letting them see a continued investment of the company growing and preparing for it keeps the morale up, right? At the end of the day, nobody likes seeing, you know, losers on dedicated and 3% margin. It does wear you out, right? um, but it even goes all the way back to our investment in 24/7. Like 25% of our company domestically is support 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Right. So like it's
Wait, 25% of the company domestically works 8 p.m. to 8 a.m.
mm,
That's crazy.
so we do a 4 day Monday through Thursday team, second and third. Then we run three, or what is it, 3 or 4 tens Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yep.
Hmm.
Right.
Wow.
Second, third. Yeah.
That's
So
different. I mean, that's different.
yeah,
I'd be selling the shit out of
I do. I do.
that.
Trust me, I saw the shit out of it. And I think for all the shippers listening, you need to listen to Andrew. How amazing that is. No,
Call us at 1
please,
a.m. and you'll
yes,
see.
right. Um, but no, I think also these are the times where you really need to make sure that people can have that work life balance when you're beating your head against the wall all day, and it is very frustrating. And for them to know, like, look, I can put my phone down, and if it's absolutely critical, right, I'll get called, but there's a good chance our support's going to be able to handle it as well, right? So like, you got to take the small wins. Putting points on the board every day is kind of how we look at it. Just like small
Hmm.
wins. Maybe we didn't hit our margin number today, but look what we improved three more processes or something.
Yep. 100%.
Right?
I'm with you. What would you say has been the hardest test you've had to deal with in the time that you've been at ease?
Oh, started in a hard market in 2014, and then um, had ups and downs. Then figured out, navigated the C word through that. You know, through the growth spurt of the following years, 22, 23, you know, uh, we grew, um, but, compression across the industry. So, I had real life decisions to make, and it's some of the hardest decisions you have to make is when you have to 100% put your business hat on because it's such an emotional business. Like,
Hmm.
especially when you start and you're out on the ops floor and you see you're working like shoulder to shoulder with everybody that's helping you run this company, right? It's such a ridiculous change, like that no one you can't be prepared for. Then have to go into a room and I have to put a business hat on, and be like, I have to make decisions based on numbers because it's the reality of the situation, you know. And it's, that was something that having to make decisions that, have to part ways with some people based on decisions that I allowed. And, I always take, it's 100% responsibility. It, it is, there's blows to your ego, and then there's that. And it's something you never, ever want to ever have to do. So being more in tune with how important it is to hold people accountable, be in tune with, obviously, if we have continued margin compression, is the company structured in a way that it can support, and how, so, learning that in real life situations over the last couple of years, um, it's
It's
definitely,
hard.
it's hard. It's the hardest thing. And it's, I wish, I don't wish, because I don't think I could be that disconnected, but it's so hard to just put that business hat on. It's like every day when I wake up before I go to bed, I think about it's not just my kids, it's everybody that's helping us move the ship forward, type of deal, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
it like I said, there's ego blows and there's that, and it's at a core level so deep that materially changes how you operate.
yeah. It's there's you talk about how emotional the business is, and I think that I think one of my flaws as the CEO was allowing my emotion to drive too many decisions sometimes, and trying to save someone pain, whether it was my ego or an employee, by not doing what the business necessarily needed, um, but more so trying to appease, again, either my own ego or their livelihood or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, I think that those there were mistakes I made, and I gotta let somebody told me this quote the other day that they live by. Now it's stick to the plan, not your mood.
Hmm.
And it like really struck home with me, like, huh, if every time, because like it's a grounding, it feels like it's a really good grounding technique, because
Mhm.
when you're clear headed, it's easy to stick to the plan. When things are in chaos, when things are emotional, that's when you can't necessarily trust where your brain is taking your decision making.
Right.
It's like how people say you should never make a decision when you're angry,
Right.
because literally when you're angry, there's a physiological change in your body where your blood all rushes to your head, and
Mhm.
then it becomes almost impossible to clearly think, and make decisions. And so, like, if I can get myself to ground in those moments and remember, like, stick to the plan, not my mood. Like, my mood tells me I want to help this person or make this choice because it'll save my ego or whatever.
Yeah.
But the plan we've been working on for 10 years. We've put
Right.
blood, sweat, and tears into the plan. And if I deviate from the plan to appease my ego or to appease this person or my mood, I'm giving up a lot of hard work that brought us here.
I know, that's a great way to put it. It's like the confidence that allows us most likely to be in these positions is the same confidence that challenges us to accept defeat. And it's not so much like, look, like we say, we've been in brokerage. We we can accept defeat and move on. It's one of those things. It's like at those such high levels where I can figure it out, right? And yeah, you're right. You get so cloudy because you just don't. It's the fear of, it's like fear of success and fear of failure are both equally as big, right? Like they're both terrifying. And they're both hard to navigate, and they're both hard to manage. And there's not any business book, at least that I've come across, that can equip you for those situations at the most extreme, right? Um, and it's like a lesson learned, and God willing, you take it into consideration and apply it, right? So you never, like I said, you never be in that position again. Um, but it's a hard fought fight, but I think what also attracts me to it is just because of the emotional side of logistics, of how much teamwork there is there too. So it's like it's a double edged sword there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I could be in this industry. I know we wouldn't be where we are today if it was not a personable business, or was it like we didn't have humanity in our core, you know.
Yeah.
So
Because like that's what carries you through the really, really hard moments. Like this business gets gruelingly challenging at times in the down markets when the opportunities aren't coming in and you're sitting looking at your P&L and L and it doesn't look how you want it to and there's no quick answers. But being able to turn and realize there are people to your left and right who are in it with you, willing to go to the ends of the earth with you because they believe in you and what you all are doing, that's what carries you from one day to the next when everything else looks darkest.
it's what gets me up every day, right? With my kids and my wife, it's like the confidence that people have in me that come in to help us move forward. Is I will do anything in the world every single day. You know, that's I would like to say I don't golf because I'm not good at it, but it's because I want to be here and I want to always drive us forward. You know, it's like, and I I love what I'm doing. I'm very fortunate to have amazing, smart people around me to help do it. Um, and I think, like you said, we're at the cusp of this industry where, for all the things we talked about, type of solutions, AI, right? Like it's super exciting right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you got your thumb on the pulse and you have the right team, and if you've been able to weather the last couple of years, I think that you know, depending on the model of your company, I think we're in good spots. You know, I think there's a lot of fun to be had and heartache, but fun to be had in the upcoming years.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see it happen.
yeah, that's my
So,
think about it every day.
well, listen, man, this has been great. I appreciate you giving me almost 90 minutes of your time and telling me more about your story and how you've built this awesome company. So,
Like,
any parting thoughts for our audience?
well, just first off, I appreciate you and what you do on this podcast of bringing shippers and suppliers and vendors and everybody together. And like we said, I just said a minute ago, like reminding the humanity aspect of the industry. You know, so I think it's super cool there. Um, you know, any last words? Just if you need any transportation or warehouse or logistics services, please reach out to East Logistics. We're 24/7.
Yeah, you are. That's all we got, folks.